Okay, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm going to hand you over to Anise now, who's going to talk a little bit about apprenticeships. So I'll hand over to you, Anise. If anyone else comes into the waiting room, I'll obviously let them in. The session is being recorded. You probably have seen it would have just come up there. We will be able to circulate this later if there's anything you miss along the way. So I'll hand over to you now, Anise. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As said, I'll be talking about apprenticeships today. I work for the ASK programme, so my role is all about spreading the awareness of apprenticeships and traineeships and T-levels, but also we support students with getting into those as well, run workshops and things like that. So I'll just share my screen and get started. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box and I can answer them at the end. Whilst I'm sharing, I won't be able to see them, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end. Hopefully you can all see that now. But first of all, starting with what apprenticeships are. So as I'm sure many of you would already know, an apprenticeship is when you have a real job with a real employer and you are also studying part-time towards a qualification whilst getting paid. So that is something key with apprenticeships. They are always paid. We do always get asked, particularly from students, what kind of salary to expect. The truth is there are a whole range. There is a national minimum wage for apprentices. Which is currently at £4.81 per hour, which can instantly sometimes put the students off. But obviously we let them know that that is the minimum. Many employers would offer more than that. I've seen a whole range from kind of the lower end of the spectrum right up to I've seen ones offering in the 20Ks, 30K, 32K. So it just depends on the level and the employer and things like that. But we do always let them know that they would always be paid. We also, of course, encourage students to think about the opportunity as a whole and think about it relatively as well. With a apprenticeship, it is considered a proper job. So they would have a contract with access to holiday pay, sick pay, and so on. And they really would be a proper member of the team. How it works with apprenticeships is 80% of their time is spent on the job, working and learning that way. And then 20% of their paid time is spent off the job studying towards whatever qualification they are working towards. In terms of how that's practically split, that varies. Sometimes it can be day release. So for example, 4 days they're going into work, 1 day in their paid time, rather than going into work, they're going into college or uni or whatever training provider is being used. Sometimes as well, it can be that they have a few weeks of work and then a few weeks of just study. There are different ways that it can be done, but it's always 80% of it on the job. So them getting lots of experience and also it being a much more hands-on way of them learning. Apprenticeships typically last between 1 and 4 years. There are some cases where they can last longer. That comes to when it's a degree apprenticeship, which I will touch on a bit more about how they work. But if it's a degree apprenticeship, as I'm sure you all know, a full-time degree does take 3 years. So once you make it part-time, it tends to be 4 to 6 years. But if it is any other level of apprenticeship, those would normally be somewhere between 1 and 4 years. All apprenticeships, no matter the level, would always last for at least 1 year, but how long will vary from apprenticeship to apprenticeship. As I said before, it is a real job with a real employer and real responsibilities. Sometimes apprenticeships can be seen as kind of an easy option, a cop-out option, only if a student is failing academically or not very academic. That definitely isn't the case. Obviously, there are a whole host of qualifications that you can get through an apprenticeship. It can be a really great plan B, but also a really great plan A. We also, of course, let the students know that they would be getting themselves into the working world by doing an apprenticeship. not everybody at 16 or even 18 would be ready for that. So we let them know that it's about thinking about what works for them, what is the best for what they're trying to get into and do in the future. Just a couple more truths about apprenticeships based on common myths we hear or common questions that we get. The first that can be a worry sometimes or a question is the progression from an apprenticeship. Sometimes people can feel that with apprenticeships, you can be taken on, used as cheap labour throughout, and then dropped for the next lot of cheap labour once you're done. And this isn't the case. About 90% of apprentices will stay on at the place that they did their apprenticeship, even after it's done. Of course, the company has spent a lot of their time and money training the young person up, and they've got to know them and they've trained them in the way that they like. So it is very, very likely that the young person would be offered a job at that company, a permanent job at that company once they are done. So it can be a really, really great way for a student to get their foot into an industry they like, a job role that they like, or a company that they like. Another worry for students can be work-life balance, social life, meeting new people, particularly, for example, if they're comparing it to what it would be like if they were going to college or sixth form or further in the future if it comes to that. University as well. We always do let the students know that the truth is they probably would have on average less free time in a week than if they were at, for example, college. They are getting themselves into the working world, as I said before, a 9 to 5. But both apprentices I know personally and have met through work and made it very clear that you very much still can have a social life, particularly depending on the company and how many apprentices they take on. But if they do take on lots of different apprentices, I know that companies do a lot to make sure that the lots of different apprentices are mingling. So they would still have the chance to be meeting new people and so on. Also, in terms of work-life balance, of course, they do know that you have your study element. So I've spoken to many apprentices, for example, who they've had an assignment coming up for the study side of it, and their manager has been okay with them taking a last minute day off and just been very accommodating. So yeah, a lot of support as well. They would have a kind of tutor that would be helping them as well as their line manager and that kind of thing. So they would be supported. Also, apprenticeships can be found all over the country. So the most common way to do it would be for the young person to live at home and do their apprenticeship from home. And there'll be lots of options there. But even if they wanted to or needed to relocate, that could be an option. There are a small minority of companies that might financially help them to relocate as well. This is onto the levels of apprenticeships and how they work. So I guess the table is quite self-explanatory, but it's just saying the name of the apprenticeship, what level of apprenticeship, and so what level of qualification they would get, and putting that into terms that we're more familiar with. So an intermediate apprenticeship is a level 2 apprenticeship. They would be getting a level 2 qualification. So level 2 qualification being GCSE level of qualification. An advanced apprenticeship is a level 3 apprenticeship. They would be getting a BTEC, so equivalent to 2 A levels, that level of qualification. Anything level 4 and above would be counted as a higher apprenticeship. So they'd be getting the equivalent to a foundation degree or more. And then specifically level 6 and 7 are your degree apprenticeships. So level 6, bachelor's degree, the first degree they can get, and level 7, their master's degree. In terms of students' options, for doing apprenticeships, all students do have to finish year 11, but once they finish year 11, of course, they have to either, they need to be in some sort of training or education. They could go to sixth form or college, or they could do an apprenticeship instead. If they were doing an apprenticeship at that stage, the levels that they would be doing would be either a level 2 or a level 3 apprenticeship. They would have the option to kind of progress to a higher level of apprenticeship or go straight into work, whatever works better for them. But one thing we do always let students know as well is that there's not an upper age limit to doing an apprenticeship. So they can, for example, make the decision that they want to stay in at sixth form or college and finish sixth form or college and then go on to apprenticeship, whether that be a level 2 or a level 3, or also because they would already have level 3 qualifications, they would have the option to go on to a higher or degree 1 as well. In terms of grade requirements, again, each company will choose their own grade requirements. But if it is a level 2 or level 3, there would be some, particularly if it's level 2, that might have no grade requirements. There are some that I've seen. But if they did have grade requirements and it is a level 2 or a level 3, that would normally be either maths and English GCSE at grade 4 or above, or functional skills level 2. Or 5 GCSEs grade 4 or above. Some apprenticeships would let students, if they don't have that qualification already, they would let students do their functional skills level 2 whilst they're doing an apprenticeship. So that can be an option as well. Just going on to degree apprenticeships specifically now. I appreciate that for some of the parents here, maybe that's a bit further, talk of university is a bit further away, but it can still be good to know about it and know how they work. And we always let students know about that option, even if it's far in advance, just so that they're aware of what's out there. So degree apprenticeship is an alternative way for a student to get a proper university degree. It is a proper university degree. It's not some sort of subsidized degree. It's not some sort of catch. They would be enrolled as a member of that university with access to the sports facilities, the clubs, student discount. They would graduate just like everyone else with a standalone degree. The only difference is, as I said, it's part-time, hence it normally takes more 4 to 6 years. On top of that, they would be earning a salary. Some of the better salaries I mentioned can be through a degree apprenticeship. A lot of them tend to be kind of 18K up. And then also they would not have to pay tuition fees. As you all know, normally if you go to university, you do have to pay for it. But with a degree apprenticeship, the employer and the government pay for that for the student, so they wouldn't have any of that debt. On top of that, 80% of their time is obviously spent on the job. So they would finish it without debt, but also with lots and lots of experience. And as I mentioned before, it is very likely as well that they would be offered a full-time job. And there are lots of different universities across the country, including in London now, that offer degree apprenticeships. Not every single university, but more and more are offering them. And so there would be lots of options if a student is interested. This slide is just about the range of apprenticeships and what is out there. It used to be with apprenticeships, they were for very specific roles. So maybe if the young person was interested in plumbing or hairdressing or specific things like that, then it was for them. And if not, it wasn't. There are still many amazing opportunities in those kind of fields, but also it expands a lot beyond that now. We now say every industry is covered. So not every role within an industry, but every industry. So for example, if someone was interested in law, there is a apprenticeship to become a paralegal or a solicitor. There isn't one to be a barrister, but as you can see, the law industry is covered and there would be some different roles. It follows the same with every industry. In terms of the levels, it will be dependent. For example, not every industry or every apprenticeship would be offered at a higher level or a degree level, depending on what they feel the industry requires. But there would be options in every industry, so it can be worth the student having a look and seeing if there's something of interest to them. This slide is just showing which employers offer apprenticeships. This is just a select few. There are many, many, many more. Overall, about 50% of apprentices will do their apprenticeships with big businesses like these, well-known names. The other half of apprentices will do their apprenticeships with smaller / more local companies. It can be tempting to feel like if it's not a big business, a big name, it's not worth it. But something we always remind the students is that both can have really great options. But this just shows that there are many, many out there. And one thing I would touch on as well is the application process when it comes to applying for apprenticeships. When it comes to applying for apprenticeships, no matter the level, whether that's from level 2 right through to degree, it's always like applying for a job. In terms of what the application process exactly will entail, just like with jobs, each company can decide, but it's like jobs in that there's an initial stage where they answer some questions or have to give in their CV or a covering letter. And if they get through that interview, assessment centres are very popular. When it comes to apprenticeships, there might be online tests and things like that. So they would be applying to the company and then have different stages based on what the company decides. Rounding up with how a student is to find an apprenticeship if they are interested. If any of you have ever had a look with any young people for apprenticeships, you might know that part of the challenge can be finding what's out there. Finds an Apprenticeship is the first website that we'd recommend. It's a government website, a live job site, lots of vacancies, and it's just for apprenticeship vacancies. Lots and lots of vacancies are put on there. They can specify specifically what they're looking for, how far they're willing to travel, what level of apprenticeship that they are looking for. And also, because it's a live job site, obviously it can be long-winded for them having to check the same thing again and again. But if they are to sign up and make an account on Find an Apprenticeship, then they can get alerts so that they can get an email or a text to let them know when something new has come up. So that's a really great place to start. The other two would be Rate My Apprenticeship and Not Going to Uni. Not Going to Uni is not just for apprenticeship vacancies, it has other things on there too, but they do have a part of their website dedicated to apprenticeships. Rate My Apprenticeship also, as well as having live jobs vacancies on there, does also have a list of top 100 apprenticeship employers and list of the top employers depending on the industry. So that can be really helpful as well. Because other than that, the places to look would just be job sites, Indeed, read any job sites, and then company websites and social media. Just like with jobs, they're companies that won't advertise anywhere else, but will on their website and social media. So we always say to students the importance of going directly to company websites. Of course, researching what kind of companies are big in their industry so they can be checking them. But the list on Rate My Apprenticeship can be really helpful with that as well, giving them the indication of where they should be checking. And then we always say word of mouth, letting their teachers know, if they have a careers advisor know, because a lot of apprentices we've spoken to, that is how they heard about their opportunity. So apprenticeships.gov.uk, it has parents resources specifically, but also does just have general information about apprenticeships, some of the kind of things I've covered today. And then amazingapprenticeships.com as well has information about apprenticeships, but also videos of different apprentices speaking about their experience and things like that too. But that brings me to the end of my talk today. I hope that was useful. I will now stop sharing my screen, and then if there are any questions, I will answer them. So the first question I've seen is, please, can this recording be made available? I know Miss Reffold said that she would make that available to you all, so absolutely. The other question is, what is the conventional route to a degree apprenticeship? I'd say that the most common way now that people do degree apprenticeships tends to be students that go on to sixth form and then go on to doing a degree apprenticeship after having done their A levels or BTECs, and go from there and go into doing a degree apprenticeship. That is the most common route that I've come across with all the students I've worked with, but it's not the only way. There's not a set route, because you can also start at lower level of apprenticeship. So I know someone, for example, she's gone into a level 4 apprenticeship, and her plan next is to do then a level 6 apprenticeship. But I'd say the most common one I've come across is people that go from sixth form or college straight into a degree apprenticeship. I would say that's the most kind of common way of doing it that I've come across. There's a hand up as well. Please feel free to unmute yourself if that's possible. I'm not sure if it is.
Yeah, it should be able to unmute now.
Another question. The person with your Ruth, please feel free if you want to ask your question.
Okay, thank you very much for your giving us this talk. But I just want to know if anyone after year 11 he wants to do apprenticeship, how can the person get CV? Is it from school or where?
Oh, a CV. Yeah, I mean, I know for example, we run CV workshops, so we can come in and support with that. But I'm sure also Canons would support them if they needed help with with CV. So we can support with that. But yeah, I'm sure within school they would be able to get support with that if that's right.
Yeah, that is right, actually. I mean, is your child in year 11?
It's not yet, but I just want to know because maybe the child has not started any work at all. So he wants to do the apprenticeship. And now I've thought that you have to get CV. That's why I'm just asking.
Yeah, so later, if he's in year 10, later in year 10 in the summer term, they will have a kind of like a careers, well, at least a careers day, if not a couple of days. And part of that, during that, they'll have a mock interview with an external, like an external industry ambassador, and they'll need to create a CV for that, and that will all be supported during their PSHRE lessons.
Oh, okay. All right. So I just want to ask again, after you said something about the levels of apprenticeship.
Yeah.
So I just want to know which one is the best in your option. Which one is the best way?
Well, the highest would be the degree or the master's degree one. So that in the terms of it's the highest one is the best. Yeah, so that's the high. You can get a degree or a master's degree through an apprenticeship. So I guess that would be the best kind of highest level of qualification that the young person can get. Also, I would add in terms of what you're saying about CV and them not having worked yet, employers would be aware of that they wouldn't have worked yet, so they can make use of the kind of things if they've done any extracurricular activities, but even things that they've done in school, they can pull on that to make use of it. So the employers would take into account the fact that they're just leaving school.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. And there's a question as well saying, when do we start doing an application for apprenticeships? Yes. So if they were interested in doing it after year 11, their applications would take place in year 11. Specifically, with kind of level 2 and level 3 apprenticeships, it can be quite later on in the academic year, as late as kind of Easter onwards, where they'd start to see vacancies with a start date that would be appropriate for them after year 11, because any earlier than that and the start date can be too early whilst they're still in year 11. But yeah, if it's in year 11, they would be applying in year 11. Let's say if they wanted to do it after year 13, for instance, it would be in year 13. So it's the year of the academic year. Yeah, that you're off. Sorry, I said that badly now. Year 11, if you want to do it after year 11, year 13, if you want to do it after year 13, would be when you would be applying. Thank you all for your questions and for your time. Are there any other questions before I?
Thank you very much, Anise, for your time this evening, and thank you to everyone who attended. I think, yeah, so we'll circulate the video for the recording to everyone, and if there are any questions, you can always get in touch with me, and either I'll try and answer them or ask Anise. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.